The old library was silent, save for the faint ticking of a clock and the occasional rustle of pages. The archives, a labyrinth of dusty shelves and forgotten manuscripts, were rarely visited. But on that cold November evening, the silence was shattered by a blood-curdling scream. Detective Arthur Blake, a tall man with sharp eyes and a well-trimmed mustache, arrived at the scene within the hour. The library was a grand centuries-old building, its walls lined with books that seemed to whisper secrets of the past. The archives, located in the basement, were dimly lit and smelled of aged paper and mildew. The victim was Professor Harold Whittaker, a renowned historian who had spent decades studying the library's rare collections. He lay sprawled on the floor, a pool of blood beneath him. A single stab wound to the heart suggested a quick and precise attack. Beside him lay an open book, its pages stained with blood. Blake knelt beside the body, examining the scene. The book was a rare first edition of a 19th-century novel, its pages filled with handwritten notes. A small, crumpled piece of paper lay nearby, bearing the words, "The truth lies in the past." The librarian, Miss Eleanor Graves, stood nearby, her face pale and hands trembling. She was a petite woman in her late 50s, with glasses perched on her nose and a no-nonsense demeanor. "I found him like this," she said, her voice shaking. "He was working late, as he often did. I heard the scream and rushed down, but it was too late." Blake nodded, his mind already racing. "Who else was in the library tonight?" "Only a few people," Miss Graves replied. "There was Mr. Charles Finch, a regular researcher, and Miss Clara Bennett, a young scholar working on her thesis. They were both upstairs in the reading room." Blake decided to interview them first. Charles Finch was a middle-aged man with a receding hairline and a nervous habit of adjusting his glasses. He claimed to have been engrossed in his research all evening and hadn't heard anything unusual. Clara Bennett, on the other hand, was visibly distraught. A young woman in her 20s, she had been working on a thesis about 19th-century literature. "Professor Whittaker was helping me with my research," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "He was kind and patient. I can't believe someone would hurt him." Blake returned to the archives, his eyes scanning the shelves. The open book beside the body caught his attention again. He flipped through the pages, noticing that several passages were underlined. One sentence stood out: "The key to the mystery lies in the forgotten letters." He turned to Miss Graves. "Are there any letters or correspondence stored here?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, in the restricted section." But only Professor Whittaker had access. Blake insisted on seeing the section. After some persuasion, Miss Graves led him to a locked cabinet. Inside were stacks of old letters, neatly tied with ribbon. As Blake sifted through them, one bundle caught his eye. The letters were addressed to a woman named Eliza, signed by a man named Edward. The contents hinted at a scandalous affair and a hidden treasure. Suddenly, the pieces began to fall into place. Professor Whittaker discovered something valuable, something worth killing for. But who among the suspects knew about it? Blake confronted Charles Finch first. "You were researching the same period as Professor Whittaker, weren't you?" Finch shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, but I had no reason to harm him." "Then why did I find your fingerprints on the restricted cabinet?" Blake pressed. Finch's face turned red. "All right, I admit it. I knew about the letters. I thought they might lead me to the treasure. But I didn't kill him." Blake wasn't convinced. He turned to Clara Bennett next. "You were close to Professor Whittaker. Did he ever mention the letters to you?" Clara hesitated, then sighed. "Yes. He told me about them last week. He said they contained a secret that could change everything, but I didn't know what he meant." Blake's gaze narrowed. "And yet, you were seen near the archives earlier tonight." Clara's eyes widened. I was just curious. I wanted to see the letters for myself, but I swear I didn't kill him." As Blake pieced together the evidence, he realized the truth. The killer wasn't after the treasure, they were trying to protect a secret. The letters revealed that Edward, the author, had been involved in a scandal that could ruin a prominent family's reputation. And that family was none other than the Finches. Charles Finch had killed Professor Whitaker to prevent the truth from coming out. In a fit of rage, he had stabbed the professor and fled, leaving behind the crumpled note as a red herring. Blake confronted Finch with the evidence, and the man broke down, confessing to the crime. "I couldn't let him destroy my family's name," Finch sobbed. As the police led Finch away, Blake stood in the archives, the weight of the case settling on his shoulders. The library was silent once more, its secrets safe for now. But as he glanced at the blood-stained book, he couldn't shake the feeling that some mysteries were never meant to be solved.